Before you begin, here are some helpful directions. This training is self-paced, and progress is saved as you go. You can track your progress using the tool on the left side of your screen. You will progress through 3 sections with audio, activities, and toolboxes containing links to helpful resources. To progress in the sections, click the Next button at the bottom of the screen. If you want to go back to a previous screen, you can either select the previous button at the bottom of the screen or use the progress tracker on the left side of the screen to jump to your desired lesson. All progress is saved. If you need help, you can reach out to info@refugeewelcome.org. It is that simple. Now, let's begin the training. Starting December 2023, the Welcome Corps has an exciting new option for sponsors. Your group can either be matched with a refugee individual or family who is already in the process of being resettled to the U.S., or you can support someone you already know. If you and your sponsor group would like to apply to support refugees you know, then this training will provide you with an understanding of who is eligible and what information you will need for the application. If you would like more information about what a private sponsor group is and how to form one, check out the resources in the toolbox at the end of this section to find links to helpful tips and resources. To apply for someone you know to be resettled to the United States as a refugee through the Welcome Corps, you will need to understand how the program works, who is eligible, and what information you will need to fill out the application. After this training, you will be able to explain how the program works, who is eligible, and what information you will need to fill out the application.
What is the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program? The U.S. Refugee Admissions Program, also known as USRAP, is a multi-step process through which refugees can resettle to the United States under U.S. law.
You cannot apply for individuals who have been previously denied for resettlement to the United States through the U.S. Who is eligible? This section will explain who is eligible for you to apply for on your Welcome Corps application. To help you understand whether the refugees you would like to apply for are likely to be eligible for a referral to the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program, Welcome Corps has designed an eligibility tool. You can find the eligibility tool on the Welcome Corps website and in the toolbox at the end of this section. The refugees listed on your Welcome Corps application can be of any nationality and must meet all these criteria. Meet the refugee definition under U.S. law. Live outside their home country. Live outside the United States. Already be registered as a refugee with the UN Refugee Agency, also known as UNHCR, or with the government of the country where they currently live by September 30, 2023. Be 18 years or older. Refugees under the age of 18 must be listed on a Welcome Corps application with their parent or legal guardian. Live in an eligible country. The U.S. Department of State assesses country conditions on a regular basis, and country categories are subject to change. Have not been previously denied for resettlement to the United States through the U.S. Refugee Admissions or Special Immigrant Visa programs. This section of the training will provide further details and information for each of these eligibility criteria. Use the eligibility tool to find out if the person you want to support can be listed on your application. You can find the eligibility tool on the Welcome Corps website and in the toolbox at the end of this section. If the refugee or refugee family already has a case number for the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program or an Afghan Special Immigrant Visa, the above criteria do not apply. You can submit your application to sponsor any refugees or special immigrant visa applicants who already have a pending case regardless of their current location. Meeting the refugee definition under U.S. law. Anyone you would like to list on your Welcome Core application must meet the definition of refugee as defined by U.S. law. Who is a refugee under U.S. law? According to U.S. law, a refugee is any person who is outside their country of nationality, or, in the case of a person who has no nationality, is outside their country of normal residence, is unable or unwilling to return to that country, has experienced past persecution, or have a well-founded fear of persecution on account of race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or membership in another type of group. To meet the refugee definition, a person must show that they have experienced past persecution or have a well-founded fear that it would happen if they had to return to their country. Persecution can be physical harm but could also include psychological or economic harm. It must be severe, usually so severe that it amounts to a threat to the person's life or their freedom. To meet the refugee definition, the person must have a genuine fear that the persecution will happen, and there is credible, specific evidence to show that their fear is reasonable. For example, proof of specific threats made to this person, or evidence showing that the government of their country of origin is persecuting other people because of the same characteristics that this person has. In addition to showing that a person has experienced past persecution or has a well-founded fear of persecution if they were to return to their country, they must also show that the persecution is on account of one of 5 characteristics: race or ethnicity, religion, nationality, political opinion, or membership in another type of group. The persecution must have been, at least partially, motivated by that characteristic. To be considered a refugee, the person does not actually have to have the characteristic. It could be also that the person committing the persecution believes that the person has the characteristic. For example, if a person committing acts of persecution harms another person because they believe that person is Venezuelan, even if the person being persecuted is not actually Venezuelan, then that persecution is on account of Venezuelan nationality. Let us focus on the last characteristic, membership in another type of group. The group that a person is a member of must share common characteristics that are fundamental or unchangeable. Examples can be tribes or ethnic groups, gender, sexual orientation, social classes, political or occupational groups, family members of dissidents, or survivors of domestic violence, to name a few. The group must have clear boundaries of who is or is not a member. An example of persecution on account of membership in a group can be if the government of a country is persecuting landowners, then landowners in that country can be considered members of a group. Another key to meeting the refugee definition under U.S. law is showing that the government from which a person has fled is unable or unwilling to control or stop the persecution. For example, a terrorist organization or a criminal organization is persecuting someone, and the government of the country where the persecution is happening is unable or unwilling to stop the persecution from happening. Or a person must be able to show that the government of the country where the person is from is itself the persecutor. Everyone you list on your application must pass the U.S. government's screening and vetting process, including reviewing their refugee claim, security screening, and medical examination to be approved for the program. Who is not eligible? Please note that even if a person meets the refugee definition according to U.S. law, other factors might make them ineligible for resettlement to the United States. For example, someone might be ineligible for the U.S. refugee admissions program if they persecuted other people, if they were involved in certain types of serious criminal activity, if they are assessed to be a security threat to the United States, or if they already have been resettled or received asylum in another country. Live outside their home country. Everyone you apply for must be outside of their home country. For example, if the person is originally from Somalia, then they must have already fled Somalia to another country, like Malaysia, for example, to be eligible. If a person is stateless or has no nationality, then they must be outside of their country of normal residence to be eligible. The country of residence is the country where this person normally lives. For example, if a person has no nationality but was born in and lived in Côte d'Ivoire, then Côte d'Ivoire could be considered their country of habitual residence. They must have already fled Côte d'Ivoire to be eligible. You cannot apply for someone who is still living in their home country, even if they have been forcibly displaced inside their home country. For example, if a person whose nationality or country of residence is Colombia, and they are forcibly displaced within the country of Colombia, then they would not be eligible for the Welcome Corps. Live outside the United States. Everyone you apply for must be outside of the United States. You cannot apply for someone who is already in the United States. If someone is already in the United States, then they might be eligible for humanitarian protection through applying for asylum, but they are not eligible for refugee resettlement, including the Welcome Corps. Meeting the refugee registration deadline. Generally, the person you apply for must have been registered as a refugee with either the United Nations Refugee Agency or with the government of the country in which they are currently living, on or before September 30, 2023. If the refugee you want to apply for was not registered by the deadline, you might still be able to apply for them on your Welcome Corps application if you first get approval from a private sponsor organization. Some private sponsor organizations can review refugee case information submitted by interested potential sponsors and make a recommendation that the case meets eligibility criteria. Please note that the number of cases private sponsor organizations review is limited, so unregistered cases will only be recommended in exceptional circumstances in which the refugee has a valid and serious reason for not having registered by the deadline. Who is exempt from this registration requirement? Refugees do not need proof of registration with the United Nations Refugee Agency or with the government of the country in which they are currently living, on or before September 30, 2023, if they have a case number for the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program, also known as USRAP, or have an Afghan Special Immigrant Visa, also known as SIV, are of Cuban, Haitian, Nicaraguan, or Venezuelan nationality. This group must upload a receipt of Form I-134 or I-134A, also called the online request to be a supporter and declaration of financial report, if they do not have proof of registration. Be 18 years of age or older. Everyone on your application for must be at least 18 years of age or be accompanied by their parent or legal guardian. You must include the minor's parent or legal guardian on the same referral form of your Welcome Corps application. Unaccompanied minors are not eligible for the Welcome Corps. Live in an eligible country. Eligibility and requirements are also determined by the country where the person is currently living. Individuals living in certain countries are not eligible for the Welcome Corps at this time, due to specific conditions such as the lack of diplomatic ties with the United States, security concerns in certain countries that limit the U.S. government's ability to interview refugees there, or because the countries already offer safety and security to refugees. For some countries, there are additional requirements based on what a refugee living there will need to get permission to exit the country. The U.S. Department of State assesses country conditions on a regular basis, and country categories are subject to change. Use the eligibility tool in the toolbox at the end of this training to determine how location impacts eligibility for the refugee you would like to apply for. Not previously denied resettlement as a refugee. You cannot apply for individuals who have been previously denied for resettlement to the United States through the U.S. Refugee Admissions or Special Immigrant Visa programs. If someone has been previously denied, they would have received a notice of ineligibility letter from U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, also known as USCIS. You can Congratulations, you are ready to apply for Someone You Know for Welcome Corps.